I'm afraid there's been a mistake, and this seat is first class, and your ticket is not valid. You need to move right now.
Wait, is that? Oh, I see.
You don't belong in first class. The words sliced through the cabin like a knife, the kind of cold, sharp authority that made every head turn. A thick silence filled the air. The faint hum of the engines suddenly muted, as if even the plane itself was holding its breath. For a split second, nothing moved. Jason didn't flinch. His eyes locked with Amber Johnson, the flight attendant, as she stood towering over him with an icy glare. He'd heard that line before. That line that told him he didn't fit, that he wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this seat, not in this world. But today, he wasn't going to let it slide. Not again. Jason's fingers tightened around the armrest of seat 2A, the smooth leather cool beneath his touch. His heart didn't race. He didn't get angry. He had learned long ago that anger was a liability. Calm, control, and precision were the tools of the real power. He had mastered those. Amber stood there, her smile too wide, too rehearsed, eyes flicking down at him like he was a problem to be solved. She glanced at his seat assignment, then back up at him, eyes narrowing. "Sir, I think you're in the wrong cabin." The words rolled off her tongue like a verdict. Jason didn't respond right away. He just waited. His gaze didn't waver. A bead of sweat trickled down the back of his neck, but he didn't let it show. He could feel the eyes on him now, the passengers in first class looking at him, some pretending not to stare, but their curiosity was palpable. He slowly pulled out his boarding pass, folding it gently before handing it to her. His ID followed, the smooth lines of his Illinois driver's license catching the dim light of the cabin. Amber barely glanced at it. Her lips twisted into a smirk, and then she laughed, the sound harsh in the otherwise quiet cabin. "This seat's been reassigned," she said, motioning toward the economy section, as though she were doing him a favor. Jason's jaw tightened, but his voice was steady. "This says 2A. First class. I've paid for this seat. It's mine." Her eyes flicked to his boarding pass again, but this time she didn't even try to hide the disgust in her expression. "I've seen this before," she muttered, looking over at the other flight attendants, Brian Foster included. "You sure you're in the right place?" Amber asked, her tone now almost mocking. Jason felt the rush of anger bubbling inside him, but he kept it in check. His breath steadied as he exhaled slowly. "I'm in the right place," he said, voice cold, "and you're going to have to let me sit here." Behind him, a man in a crisp navy suit shifted in his seat, watching the drama unfold. Jason could feel the tension crackling in the air as Amber's smirk faded into something darker. Brian stepped forward, his young face full of smug confidence. He looked at Jason as if he were an intruder in a space he didn't belong. "Yeah, man, you sure you're supposed to be here?" Jason's eyes met Brian's, holding his gaze with the calm of someone who had seen this all before. His hands remained steady. "This is my seat," Jason repeated, his voice now taking on a razor-sharp edge. "You're not going to move me, not today." Amber's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of annoyance. "We have VIP guests who need this seat," she snapped, gesturing toward a wealthy couple in the front rows. Jason looked at them, the Bennetts, sitting comfortably, sipping their champagne, as if this moment, his humiliation, was part of their experience. He could feel their eyes on him, a silent judgment passing between them and the crew. The woman, Laura, flashed a tight smile, while Richard, her husband, raised his glass, completely unaware of the power dynamic unfolding. Jason could practically hear their unspoken thoughts. Why is he still here? But it didn't matter. He wouldn't move. "I'm not moving," Jason said again, this time with more force, his eyes locking with Amber's. Her frustration was clear. and Jason could feel the power shifting, slipping from her grasp. Her grip on the situation was loosening. In the distance, the captain, Daniel Pierce, stepped into the aisle, his uniform sharp and his eyes scanning the scene. Jason didn't look at him. He didn't need to. He knew what was coming. Amber approached the captain, whispering something Jason couldn't hear. He felt the air grow colder as Daniel's eyes found him. Jason remained seated, his posture unyielding. The captain's voice cut through the cabin, cold and controlled. "We're going to have to ask you to move, sir. There seems to be a mistake." Jason's lips curled into a faint smile. He knew the game, and this time he wasn't going to lose. "Move?" Jason asked, his tone low, barely a whisper that cut through the tension. "You want me to move because she doesn't like the way I look? Or because she's afraid of what I might represent?" Amber's face flushed. The passengers were watching. The phones were out. The whispers were no longer whispers. And that was when Jason Carter, CEO of Horizon Airlines, made his move. "Not today," he said. "You're about to make the biggest mistake of your lives." And that's when everything began to change. Jason's words hung in the air, cutting through the tension like a blade. Amber froze for a moment, her eyes flicking nervously to Captain Pierce. Her voice shook as she spoke, but she tried to maintain control. "Sir, if you don't move, we'll have to remove you from the flight." The authority in her voice was fragile, the cracks beginning to show. Jason didn't budge. He didn't even blink. His gaze remained steady, cold, unshakable. Captain Pierce stood there, staring at Jason with a look of confusion mixed with hesitation. He had been flying for over 20 years. He knew how to deal with the entitled passengers, the ones who made a scene to get what they wanted. But something about this moment didn't feel right. He could sense the power shift, feel the eyes of the passengers on him, waiting, watching. A low murmur spread through the cabin, growing louder with each passing second. Jason's words had already planted a seed in their minds. "I'm not going anywhere," Jason repeated, his voice calm, measured, but every syllable a weight. "I've paid for this seat. I am not moving." Amber's eyes flicked to Brian, seeking some kind of backup, but he was already looking uncomfortable. The situation was spiraling out of their control. Passengers were starting to record, and the air was thick with the scent of impending chaos. In the corner, someone whispered, "What's going on? Why is he being treated like this?" Others glanced nervously at their phones, the cameras already rolling. Jason had become the focal point of the flight, and he wasn't going to let go of that power. Captain Pierce's voice finally broke the silence. "I don't know what's going on here, but we need to resolve this quickly. We're holding up the flight." His tone was neutral, but Jason could hear the underlying discomfort. This wasn't just another first-class dispute. It was something more, something bigger. "I think you should know who you're dealing with," Jason said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't demanding, he was simply stating the truth, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Captain Pierce's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" he asked, a trace of annoyance creeping into his voice. He was the captain. He was in charge here. Jason stood up slowly, his movements deliberate, controlled. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his business card, sliding it across the seat to the captain. "That's who I am," he said, his eyes meeting Pierce's with a quiet, undeniable authority. The card was black, sleek and simple, with gold lettering engraved on it. It didn't need to say much. The name was enough. Captain Pierce's face fell. For the briefest moment, his stoic expression cracked. He glanced at the card, then back at Jason, his mouth opening and closing as if trying to find the right words. But there were no words. No apologies. No excuses. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Jason could see the shift in the captain's eyes. The discomfort, the fear, the recognition that this wasn't just any passenger. This was Marcus Carter, the CEO of Horizon Airlines, the very company they worked for, the one they had just tried to humiliate. Amber stood there, her face turning pale as the implications of the situation dawned on her. The phone cameras were still rolling. The entire cabin had become a witness to her mistake. She had just made the most crucial error of her career, and she knew it. "We can sort this out," Captain Pierce muttered, taking a step back. He looked at Amber, then at Brian, as though silently urging them to handle the situation. The power dynamic had shifted, and he knew it. Jason didn't speak again. He didn't need to. His silence was a statement in itself. He could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him, the entire cabin now aware of who he was. He had won, but the battle wasn't over. Not yet. This was just the beginning. Amber turned on her heels, looking frazzled. "I'm sorry, sir," she muttered. But the apology sounded empty. Jason could hear the tremor in her voice as she hurried down the aisle, her steps quick and uncertain. As the tension slowly began to dissipate, the murmurs from the passengers started to grow louder. They were whispering, talking to each other, still trying to process what had just happened. The disbelief was palpable. Jason sat back down in his seat, his posture calm, collected. He picked up his tablet, pretending to resume his work, but his mind was sharp, focused. The captain's voice came over the intercom, the message loud and clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're resolving a small issue in first class. We apologize for the delay, but we'll be underway shortly." The flight attendants moved swiftly, pretending to carry on with the usual service, but Jason could feel their eyes on him. They had just witnessed something that would change their lives, something they would never forget. In the back of the plane, a few passengers exchanged glances, their phones still recording, their curiosity piqued. They hadn't seen the end of this yet. And neither had Jason. This was just the beginning of his revolution, his quiet rebellion in the face of an unjust system. He wasn't just a passenger anymore. He was the man who would make them all see. See the truth. See the power of what it meant to belong. The plane hummed quietly, the engine steadily pushing them through the sky, but the atmosphere in first class was anything but calm. Jason remained in his seat, his tablet in hand, but his mind was focused, sharp. Amber and Brian were still moving about, but there was no more arrogance in their steps, only the weight of the mistake they had made. Jason's eyes never left the screen, but his ears caught every word, every whisper around him. The passengers were talking, discussing what had just happened, the ripple of tension growing with each passing minute. They had witnessed something today, something they would talk about long after they left the plane. A few rows back, someone muttered under their breath, "That's the CEO of Horizon Airlines, right?" The question spread like wildfire through the cabin, and Jason could feel every pair of eyes shifting toward him, though he still remained perfectly still. It was happening. People were starting to realize the magnitude of the situation. But for Jason, this wasn't about them. It wasn't about the validation of his seat in first class. No, this was about something deeper, something more fundamental. This was about control. The intercom crackled overhead, cutting through the low hum of quiet murmurs. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We will be departing shortly." The captain's voice, cold and detached, did nothing to ease the growing tension. Jason could tell that Captain Pierce was trying to regain control, to pull things back to normal. But there was no going back now. This wasn't just a seating issue. This was about who controlled the narrative. Jason had always known the power of perception, the power of understanding who holds the keys. As the minutes ticked by, he could feel the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Amber finally returned, her smile tight, fake. She stopped by his seat, and this time her posture was deferential, not authoritative. "Mr. Carter, we apologize for the confusion earlier," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Jason glanced at her, not looking up from his tablet, but his words cut through the air. "This is not a confusion," he said, his tone low, controlled. "It's a failure to see the truth, to respect the people who pay your salary." Amber's eyes widened, and she swallowed, stepping back, unsure of how to respond. Jason didn't give her a chance. "It's not just about me," he continued, his gaze finally meeting hers. "It's about every person in this cabin. Every person who gets treated like they don't belong. I'm not the only one. I'm just the one who will make sure you all remember what this feels like." He leaned back in his seat, his eyes never leaving hers. Amber's face flushed, but she said nothing. She turned, walking briskly toward the galley, her shoulders